Corvus Belli just dropped huge announcements for Infinity, new Morat Aggression Force, the new Fire Team rules, all the new models, Hackislam, X, Aleph. But of course, you are in the hobby corner, which means we are only going to talk about one thing, and that is the Marut update. Y'all know that I have been painting my Marut. I think it's weird. I think that you can see the insecurity of the design team and the management team or whatever, the two teams fighting each other in the design. The model itself, when you look at the concept art, has areolas on its mechanical memories, and in the model itself, it's posed bent over completely to just really show off that donk. They didn't even think about like what they were gonna do with 4 arms. They had a really hard time posing all those to look cool in every angle. So the current model probably needed a refresh for a couple reasons, but I think the interesting thing to talk about here is that it's obvious which of the two sides won the conflict when you look at the new model. When you look at the new model here, you see the overt sexualization is gone, to say the least. It now has what is effectively a mech skirt, no visible donk. And what would have been the memories have been abstracted to, you know, more generic mech volume in the chestal region. And any, I guess, genderization of the design goes a little bit more proportionally to the overall portions of the model, like the narrower shoulders of it when you compare it to something like the Zeta. So a lot more abstraction going on here. I have a couple thoughts about it. I'm not gonna say it's good or bad, all right? And I made myself clear in my previous video about model range refreshes that I do not like it when the fandom goes crazy because they like don't approve of the model range refreshes, you know, so I think that's just dumb. But you know, I just think this is kind of a fun topic and I want to talk about it. First thing I want to talk about here is the concept of cake. And I want to preface this with like, it's difficult to talk about cake because there's like a fine line between like fan service in like a media that you like and objectification that leads to negative stereotypes or reinforcing negative behaviors like assault. I'm just gonna put that out there that like right now it is a very fine line between just fan service in a media and all this other bad shit, you know, so I am aware. And what I would like to talk about is just the concept of fan service here, okay? So within fan service, I think, especially in Western media, Western properties, I think one of the biggest problems is actually just the asymmetry of it all. It's only ever fan service for the male gaze, for the gaze of those interested in sexualized females, okay? I think that's one of the biggest problems, is asymmetrical. What I mean by that is like there's almost nothing that's going the other way. Over-sexualization of a male anatomy for a female gaze or those interested in male sexualization, I guess. I don't know the words for it. You know, I'm not woke enough to know the words for it. I will learn the words if you guys will tell me, please, I beg you. So it's asymmetrical. There's only stuff about women. There's not enough stuff about men. And I hesitate to think that like many people in a Western culture can even imagine what this other side looks like. And so I'm about to tell you what that side looks like because I have seen it. One of my hobbies I don't get to talk about enough and that you will see behind me if you look very hard is tokusatsu, which is live action hero shows in Japan. I've probably watched like 25 out of 50 plus, out of the 50 plus Power Ranger shows, Super Sentai shows. Actually, when I went to Japan, I tried to go to all the bars. I only had time for one, but I went to Dairanger, Tenma-Ranger, which is Kung Fu Blue has his own bar on like the second floor of like in this alleyway, him and I in his bar, and we just drank and talked with Google Translate. It was sick. Anyway, so about 10 years ago, there was a trend in anime to do tokusatsu style shows. One of the biggest ones being Tiger and Bunny. So for those of you who don't know, it's this show that's like the concept of superheroes sponsored by corporations. And then the main characters are this old fart and this young buck. So it's kind of this buddy cop sponsored superhero show. And when you look at the actual like character designs for Tiger and Bunny, Tiger looks super like an O12 Zeta unit, and Bunny looked like a Zeta unit, and a Marut had a baby. So actually like the design language is like pretty close, you know, to like what we're talking about right now. But anyway, the point is, at some point that show turned a little bit more into like a fan service for like the female gaze. So, you know, there's a lot of fan art, there's body pillows of these two guys. If you guys have ever seen the Opie mouse pad, which is one of the cringiest pieces of merch I've ever seen fan service wise for anything, there's actually a Tiger and Bunny Opie mouse pad, but it's the donk, not Opie. So Just wanted to share that. I'm sorry if your eyes are bleeding now, but you know, this just to show that in other cultures outside of Western cultures, there are products that service a female gaze. To simplify that, again, I don't know the words. And you know, it wasn't like this was a small show. They had big sponsors. This was a relatively big show as far as anime goes. And I'm not going to tell you that anime is like completely symmetrical in terms of like fan service equal amount. It's definitely weighted way heavier on the male gaze, as is the rest of the world, but there are products servicing this other audience. And so that's actually, you know, not my suggestion, but more of a question is some of that insecurity about the overt sexualization of the Marut, is some of that insecurity solved if over-sexualization was a little bit more symmetrical? Question. Obviously, the wargaming hobby is predominantly male. We all know this. When I look at my channel analytics, it says 100% male audience. And, you know, maybe some women just aren't reporting. I don't know. I would see how, you know, they could be using the female cake, if you will, as a marketing tool. But, you know, if they are trying to push like a more inclusive culture, which I think Corvus Belli is trying, one option, of course, is to degenderize the Marut, but the other direction might have been to go the other way with another model. I don't know. Interesting topic. Unexplored territory. Not saying it's a good idea, all right? But just a consideration. The next thing I want to kind of discuss in regards to the Marut redesign is actually just Infinity mechs in general, and actually wargaming mechs in general. How I think some of them, and I don't know how much they do this on purpose, but I feel like they kind of like didn't do enough homework in regards to the reference material. I can say this especially about like older Infinity tags, like the Pano tags, the old ones, like the Seraph, and even like the old cutter, oh man. And all the Tau models, just all the Warhammer 40k Tau models, you know, they're all not built to the right proportions of like what traditional Japanese mech design is supposed to be. Especially when I look at the Tau, what I think is that like some British dude took like the concept of like the roly-poly kind of effect of construction of like samurai shoulder pads, and then they kind of combine that with like the proportions of, they were basically just trying to make like a samurai kind of mech. And then they kind of made it look a little bit more high tech because they were probably thinking like, oh yeah, Akira. And so like I think a Western audience understood that as like a Japanese mech. But for those who like actually love mech anime, and I swear I have on my personal channel like just a whole playlist of just Japanese robots combining. It's like a 3-hour long playlist. This is my life. It's just Japanese robots combining. If you do just a little bit of homework, you'll see that with very few exceptions, the template for what a Japanese mech is design-wise, and maybe this comes mostly from Gundam and onward, so from the 70s onward, is that the traditional template is actually proportionally female. There is always a snatched waist. There is very often like a skirt to kind of help transition like the flare into big hips. And then traditionally the thighs are like really big. Very little difference between Chun-Li and like most Gundams is what I'm trying to say. And you don't really think about that. You don't really gender a Gundam always necessarily. And usually the pilot is a dude. It's like a warrior. So I don't know if people are like coding maleness onto Gundams most of the time, you know, or like non-Japanese audiences or whatever. That's where I think, you know, the Marut, the old Marut model at least, a little bit of an awkward spot where it's like taking this thing that was already designed proportionally female and then like taking it to the next level, like, oh, in case you didn't get it, this is a girl. Actually, they were all already girls, except for like Evangelion. They were all girls already, you know, and then all the other ones like kind of misunderstood and made them all guys. And I think a real funny example was like 1995 or whatever, G Gundam. You know, the concept, part of the concept was like an international kind of tournament. So countries each had their own Gundams. And there was the America Gundam, which is a straight up football player. And of all the Gundams in the line, this was the one that was top heavy, shoulder heavy. And I think that is kind of like the thing that, especially back then, I think it's getting better now, but whenever some Western company made like a Japanese mech, they would still include like the Western or European like body standard for males with the top heaviness. But that's completely misunderstanding the reference material, or just not seeing the reference material at all. The reference material, the template, is definitely proportionally female. That's how it works. Anyway, kind of an interesting thing in regards to the Marut, and why I also thought it was kind of funny, was just that complete misunderstanding of the source material, that they are all actually already girls. Like, you don't gotta put areolas on it, you know? Anyway, obviously I've thought way too hard about this. Hope you enjoyed yourselves. Please like and subscribe. We're always desperate. And post all your hot takes in the comments below. See you next time.
I am ready to subscribe again.